Welcome to Bible Study Hub. I'm Ann Wiggins, and I'm so glad that you're with us at this spectacular early time tonight of 7:30 p.m. instead of our normal 9 p.m. Eastern time. So if you are able to join us live, a special thank you to you for being so flexible with my work schedule tonight. Happy that you're here. Well, let's get right into it because we have a lot of ground to cover and not much time to get it done in. We are in chapter 37 of Genesis. And just to kind of give us a little running start here, a little review. We have studied Abraham, we have studied Isaac, we have studied Jacob, and now we're still studying Jacob, but we're passing that baton on to Jacob's sons. His eldest son, Reuben, we learned last week, who would have been the natural recipient of the birthright because he was the firstborn to Leah, who was, of course, Jacob's not first choice for a wife, but ended up being his first wife. That's a whole story that you probably know or heard us teach. Reuben went and slept with his father's concubine. And because of that, he lost access to the birthright. He disqualified himself. And we said at the time that was not just unthinkable because it was just frankly immoral and quite honestly gross. It was an assault on his father's authority. So he actually went after his dad. I mean, think about that for just a moment. He challenged his father when he slept with his father's concubine in a very frontal way, out of bounds, not okay. And so Jacob, as a righteous man, realized he cannot pass the birthright down to someone who would do something like that. At the point that he decides not to give it to the technical firstborn, but to put the status onto another child, the playing field is wide open. There's no rule that you have to go to the next oldest and then the next oldest. At that point, it doesn't matter anymore who you give it to as far as like order of birth. So he ends up bestowing it on his favorite son, Joseph. So I have a question just to even get this kicked off tonight. Normally we wait a little bit, but I wanted to know what you thought about this because we talked about it a little bit last week. Do you think that Jacob made a righteous choice in choosing Joseph? Like, was it valid? Was it righteous? Is it the right thing to do? Or do you feel like he was obviously playing favorites? He should have put more thought into making it maybe evening out the playing field by going in the birth order so that the other boys wouldn't have felt so rejected by their father when he jumps over all of them and lands on next to youngest son, which would have been Joseph. So go ahead and comment. What do you think? And just a very brief, like maybe why you think it. Was he justified? Or do you feel like he made a major, major goof here, should never have done it that way? He was out of line. What do you think? Goodness, I can't do anything right tonight. Running over to the comments. Okay. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say out there. What do you think? We have a bit of a delay. We always do. It's always awkward. I'm filling time, obviously. Really hoping that somebody comments here very quickly. We must have a long delay tonight. Okay, good. Emily saved the day. Thank you. She says, yes, it was a great opportunity to pick the most worthy. Okay, so Emily's saying he was justified in his choice. He made the right choice because he was able then to choose the son who most exemplified the qualities and character that he would have been looking for in bestowing that type of honor and responsibility and authority too. All right, great. Great work, Emily. Roberta said he made a righteous choice. He had seen how he acted in his life and how much he loved God. Okay, so Roberta concurs with Emily, and she's just saying he had watched the boys and he was impressed with Joseph and his desire to follow after God and his integrity. So he made the right choice. Anybody else out there want to comment? We have two that say Jacob did a good job. Wondering if anybody wants to choose the opposite and say, no, I think he was off base. I don't think you should have done that. Proves he didn't do a very good job. Nope, very quiet out there in Facebook land. All right. Well, let me go on then. I would agree, honestly, with Emily and with Roberta. I think he absolutely made the right choice. And I don't think you can really know that for sure right now. But as you read through the book of Genesis, oh, sorry, I'm going to take that question down if I can find it. Oh, let's see. There it is. We have another comment. I'm going to read this comment too. Lori says, I want to believe it was a righteous choice, but was thrilled that it also happened to be his favorite. Okay, so she's saying it was righteous, but it probably didn't hurt that he really, really connected with Joseph on a special level because he was the son of his favorite wife. I mean, let's just be honest. And the Bible does say he loved him more. I mean, you can't sugarcoat that. And that is not something that we as parents ever want to be accused of. If you have more than one child, I guarantee you have been accused of that by your children, probably by both of them. Don't they, when they're little, you love him more than me. Yeah, everybody likes to be the victim there. But if you actually do love one of your kids more than all the others, that's probably not going to sit well with the other children. So, whatever his motives were, whether he was right or he was wrong, it caused massive problems for Joseph. So Jacob inadvertently creates the situation that puts his favorite son, the son that he has bestowed the birthright on, in terrible danger because he underestimates, Jacob underestimates the vitriol and the hatred that these boys have for this favorite son that leapfrogged over all of them to get this birthright. So Jacob's failure to protect his son Joseph is going to lead to a ton of suffering for Joseph, for Jacob, and for really the entire family. Things are going to start to crumble really fast tonight. Just as a couple other little things, just because we're going to hit these tonight in our study, and I want to make sure that we remember. From 2 weeks ago when we last met, Joseph shared a couple of dreams that he had after he had gone out and brought in a bad report to his father about the brothers. Once again, it was Jacob and Joseph. I mean, I wish they didn't both start with J. It's just impossible for me to get this right. Joseph was asked by his dad to go out and check on the boys. This is prior to the dreams. And he does. And he comes back with a fully integrity report. He reports what happens. It's not good. And the brothers, predictably, are really, really upset. So heading into his dreams, they already are mad at him and they think he's probably a big tattletale. But honestly, I don't think he's a tattletale because his job was to do exactly what he did. And to come back with a good report when they were doing things wrong or bad would have meant lying to his father, right? Or just saying to his dad, I'm not doing it, which is to shirk his duty. So he didn't do any of those things. He does the difficult thing. He brings the truth back and it costs him dearly. And sometimes that happens in our family. You tell a family member in integrity the truth because you have to, and it blows up in your face. And those are not fun moments to be in. I think we've all been there. So anyway, he goes on with these dreams. He shares. He says, "I'm out in the field, guys, and we're making sheaves of the wheat, presumably." And he goes, "All your sheaves bow down to my sheaf." And they were like, "Are you serious? You cannot be serious that you actually are telling us this." And then he has another dream, which he shares with them again. And he says, and to his father as well, he goes, "The sun, moon, and 11 stars all bow down to me in my dream." And his dad at this point is kind of irritated with him. He says, "Are you kidding me? You think that your parents are going to bow down to you? I don't think so." So that's kind of where we ended up last week or 2 weeks ago when we last met. And now we're going to get into verses 12 to 17 of Genesis 37. So if you have your Bibles, go ahead and open them or click on the tab that you have open in your browser. So here we go. It says, "Now his brothers went to pasture with their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph," by the way, Israel is Jacob, but God changed his name a few weeks ago in our study. So that we're talking about Jacob here. "And Israel said to Joseph, 'Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them.' And he said to him, 'Here I am,' which is just colloquial for 'at your service.'" That's really all that means. It was just something that they would say that meant "at your service." So he said to them, or to him, "Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a man found him wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, "What are you seeking?" I am seeking my brothers, he said. Tell me, please, where are they pasturing the flock? And the man said, they have gone away, for I heard them say, let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. Fascinating passage. So after settling in Hebron, Jacob's sons, minus Joseph here, because he's in charge, he's not to be out with the flocks, he's to be serving his father, he's doing what he's supposed to. They all go north to Shechem. Now, Jacob had purchased some land in Shechem, so it makes sense that they would go up there to pasture their flocks. So Jacob again sends, after it went so badly the first time, you would think that Jacob would be like, I think we'll just let them be. Or maybe I'll send a different servant out, but not my son because they already hate him. I don't know. It seems really tone deaf to me that Jacob didn't pick this up. But you know what? Sometimes as parents, we really do miss a lot that's going on. So maybe he was just oblivious to the feelings in the family. At any rate, he sends Joseph out. Maybe they had been gone a little bit longer than he had thought. He thought they ought to be back by that time. So again, we see Joseph acting in integrity. He is such a righteous man because he goes out to Shechem and he's looking and he's wandering. That's what the Bible says. He's not just like standing there looking. He is actively trying to find this group of men with this huge flock. I mean, he had to probably walk a really long way, like 50 miles to just get to Shechem, about 50 miles. So what is that? 2-3 days maybe if you walked fast. And then once he gets there, he's crisscrossing, trying to find where on earth they are. And then this man shows up. And we don't know who he is. The Bible doesn't tell us. There are some commentators that just insist this is a Christophany. This is Jesus Christ pre-incarnate, or it's an angel who's talking. I would love to believe that. And I think it's a definite possibility. But the problem is you don't get really, really like hunkered down on things that the Bible's not clear on. And the Bible just simply doesn't tell us. But what we do know is that that man directs him in a direction that will end up being the most treacherous, crazy circumstance. Boy, Joseph gets into some crazy, I don't know if it's the craziest, but it's for sure in the top 2. Okay, crazy things that happen in his life. Here he is. He thinks he's going to go off. He's going to find his brothers. He's going to figure out what's going on. And then he's just going to go back home and he's going to tell his dad. It's a typical day, nothing special, nothing on the radar. He's doing his job. And what he doesn't realize is that the next time he comes back to the area of Shechem will be when his descendants bring his bones back. Hundreds and hundreds of years later, like 200 years, I think it was, before his bones are brought back. Isn't that something? And it just made me think just how many times in our lives you wake up on a day and you think it's going to be a normal day and God doesn't tell you anything special or anything's going to happen. And by the end of that day, your world is either turned upside down or changed forever, maybe for the good, maybe not for the good, but something major happened that you didn't expect. I have to tell you a quick story. I was driving home from work a couple of days ago. It was one of those really rainy days. We had, I think the hurricane or the tropical storm or something like came up the coast and dumped on Pennsylvania, southeast corner. So it just rained like for 2 days straight and it was gross. Anyway, so it was one of those days. So I was driving home on this 2-lane road, just lined with trees on both sides. It was late at night. And I came around a curve and there were 2 cars ahead of me that had just stopped. And the reason that those 2 cars had just stopped is because a huge tree had just fallen across the road. It was laying across, I mean, it was enormous across both lanes of traffic. And my first thought was, if I had been, I don't know, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, maybe ahead of schedule, that tree could have fallen on my car. And here I would have thought I was just going home like always. And I would have woken up in heaven most likely because that would have crushed my vehicle and probably me in it. Praise God, he protected me and that didn't happen. And he protected everybody because it was not on a car. Oh, thank the Lord for that. It was just on the road. But I thought of this story and I thought of our lives and just how you just don't know, do you, what a day will bring, and how we just need to be always walking with the Lord, always serving, always ready, keep short accounts. So if something did happen, wouldn't be any regrets, because surprises are truly a part of life. They're just going to happen. Well, this man, whoever he is, sends Joseph off. And here's what happens. 18 to 24. They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. Wow, these are his brothers. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what becomes of his dreams." They are just vindictive. But when Reuben, the oldest, heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, Reuben, that he might rescue him out of their hand and restore him to his father." So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Now, remember that coat that they just stripped off of him was not just a pretty present from daddy. The coat was the uniform of the firstborn. It was his sign of authority given by his father as a sign that the father put his stamp of approval on this, that he is in firstborn status and therefore is the mediator between the dad and the rest of the family, and he is in charge of doing his father's bidding, which includes overseeing and managing all of his older brothers. So when they take and they strip him of that coat, this is way more than just, oh, it will lighten the load when we throw him in the pit, or let's not get the coat dirty, or we just don't want him to have it anymore. I mean, what was he going to do with it in the pit? This was them telling him, "You think you're in charge of us, do you? Well, see how in charge of us you feel now that you don't have your coat on, son." And then they go ahead and they throw him into this probably abandoned well or something. I actually did a little research. First of all, I forgot to pop this up, but let me just do this real quick. This is Dothan, where the brothers went, and this is Dothan today. I just thought that was interesting. It does look pretty nice for grazing, doesn't it? But what I was going to show you right now is this old, deep, waterless well. And this is one of 2 or 3 wells that it is thought and believed over in Israel that maybe Joseph was thrown into. Now, everybody admits that nobody knows where that was. So it's possible that this was it. It probably isn't. But I just thought, wow, when he hit bottom in that thing, I mean, it's a wonder he didn't break his neck, you know? You think about them throwing him in. I'm sure that their goal here was not to do it in a way that was really like, okay, just lower him down and then let him go so he doesn't have too far to fall. Oh no, they threw him into it. So he fell. There's stone and rock everywhere. It's a wonder he didn't either break his neck or break bones. I mean, maybe he did break bones and we just don't know about it. I'm sure he was scratched and I'm sure he was really, really bruised and really, really hurting. So this was an assault on him. It was an assault on their father. Don't miss that. Remember what we said about Reuben earlier, that he had actually like a frontal attack on his father's authority by doing what he did with Bilhah, sleeping with the concubine? Here we have the brothers doing the same thing. This is not just against Joseph. This is against their dad. And that's part of why it makes it so just like mind-blowingly evil and wicked. Well, Reuben attempts to soften the situation. He's not brave enough to say, "Guys, what on earth are you doing?" He probably figured that they would turn on him and kill him, and he probably was nervous about that. So as he was the technical firstborn, he devises a plan in his mind by which he says, "Okay, let's not kill him. Just throw him in the pit. You know, he'll die later." And then he figures, I'll go off, I'll come back, and I will rescue him, and then everything will be fine. So I want to ask you a question as a group. You did so great with the questions earlier. I'm looking forward to hearing your responses here. Why do you think that Reuben, of all the brothers, was the voice to speak out against killing Joseph? I mean, Joseph was Reuben's replacement. Like the other boys felt slighted. Reuben actually had the birthright removed from him because he would have been the technical firstborn who would have naturally have gotten it and given to somebody else. So it seems interesting to me, and not weird, but just I guess interesting is a better word. Interesting that Reuben is the one who actually is planning to do something to keep this death from happening to his younger brother. So the question is, why on earth? Why do you think so? Why was Reuben the one? Not Simeon, not Levi, not Judah, none of the others, not Zebulun, not Gad, not Asher. I feel like I'm naming off reindeer. Why do you think that Reuben was the voice to speak out against it? He had to have something going on in his mind. We know he was not a great guy. So what was his motive in doing that? Looking forward to hearing your answers here. It's a fun story, isn't it? The Bible writes stories, God's stories, and they're true. God's stories, they blow away everybody else's stories. Nobody can compete with the stuff in the Bible. Emily says, because he had wronged his father, this was a gesture to make things right, to protect the right that was fairly given to Joseph. Okay, I think that's a great take on it. Maybe he was repentant over what he had done. Maybe he acknowledged that it was wrong, and this was his way of kind of making restitution. So great statement. Roberta says, I think he knew it would hurt his dad if nothing was done, or maybe to atone for what he did earlier. Okay, so again, Emily and Roberta, it's like you're on the same page. That's so cute. I love it, and I agree with everything that you're saying. Somebody else is saying maybe he thought he could get his birthright back. Oh, by appearing to save his brother. I never gave that one a thought. I don't know if that ever happened. I don't know if once it was given, it could ever be returned, like regifted. I don't know, but that's an interesting thought. That's why I like posing these questions, because you guys come up with answers that I never think of, and you do it right off the cuff. I've been thinking about this for 2 weeks, and you come up with something I hadn't thought of before. Anybody else want to chime in? Why do you think Reuben? Spoiler, we have no idea because the Bible doesn't tell us. It's just, I like to think through these things, like what was going on in these people's minds? Because again, these are real stories. These are things that really and truly happened. This is not made up stuff. And it's not ethereal, like it's trying, like Reuben represents this and Joseph represents that. These are real people. This is a historical account. All right, well, let me pull that down and let's go on. To go onto the right folder here to get my next set of notes. Okay, so they've thrown Joseph into that deep, deep pit, and the plan is to let him die. Now we'll see what happens. Genesis 37, 25 to 28. Then they sat down to eat, because what else are you going to do after you nearly kill your brother? And looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, just a lot of spices current to that day, on their way to carry it down to Egypt. They were tradesmen, or traders, I should say. Then Judah said to his brothers, what profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. How magnanimous of him. And his brothers listened to him. Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. Now, sitting down to eat to us sounds like, what a rude thing to do. Like, really, you're hungry right now, and what are you rubbing this in Joseph's face? Because like, you're in the pit, you can't have a sandwich, but we're eating all the sandwiches and the fried chicken. It wasn't really that. I mean, they were probably hungry. That's fine. But in this day and time, eating a meal together, sharing a meal had implications way beyond just filling bellies. It was a sign of covenant. It was a sign of unity. It was a sign of solidarity. Do you remember as we've talked through like various times that covenants were made and they would cut the covenant and they would say their piece and walk back and forth or whatever it was. And then what did they always do? They always shared a meal because that was how you kind of like culminated this covenant making. So, what these boys are actually doing is saying to each other, we're all in this together. We're all in agreement that this needed to happen and that what we did was the right thing. Wow. Now, let's talk about Judah for a minute because Judah's like, you know what? Let's just sell him. After all, he's our own flesh and blood. But he's not being nice. This is not a kind act. It tells us why he said that because he suddenly realized, well, we can kill him for free or we can sell him and whatever happens, happens after that because who cares? And we get the money. It was all about the money for him. Now, God uses all of this. They don't know it. They're playing right into God's hands. He is 1,000 steps ahead of them. He knows how this is going to end. And it's, like I said, amazing. But at the time, Judah just figures, why don't we get some cash out of the deal? At least then we go home with something more than just the lack of a brother. What's really interesting to me is that Judah sells his own brother for 20 pieces of silver. And someday, hundreds and hundreds of years down the road, many hundreds of years, Judah's own offspring, Jesus Christ. I know if you're not aware of that, Jesus is from the tribe of Judah. God's grace, that's all. There's no other explanation. Judah did not deserve that. He did not earn that. He was not a great person. He was not a good person. He was not a nice person. Chapter 38 will even further blow up your idea of Judah because he does something even, well, not worse, but almost as bad as this. And it's awful. Judah sells his brother for 20 pieces of silver, which is at this point in time, the going rate for a common male slave. His descendant, Judah's descendant, Jesus Christ, will someday be sold by a close friend that's like a brother for 30 pieces of silver, which is at that time the going price for a male slave. And the reason I bring that up is because as we talk about Judah here now, and then, like I said, in chapter 38, he's the main character. We take a little parentheses out from Joseph. We're going to talk about Judah. As you see Judah's life, the Bible just shines a spotlight on God. I don't even know how to explain this. It's like God says, hey, Judah, remember when you did this? And he brings it back to him. What he does comes back on him in some way, shape, or form, even to the exact words that Judah uses and the brothers use in this chapter. You will have said to him exactly the same way in chapter 38. I don't know if that makes sense if you don't know what's coming, but all I'm trying to say is it so often feels like God, are you out there? Do you see the evil that is going on? Do you care? Do you ever do anything? Because it feels like these people, as the Psalms, right? It feels like these people just keep going and going and going, and nothing ever happens. God is not mocked. What a man sows, he also will reap. There is grace, there is mercy, but I will tell you this, if you've ever had it happen to you, there are times when God, just like a great parent who pulls you into a room away from your siblings to deal with you on things because it's none of their business. There have been times in my life where God has pulled me away, where what is going on, I am totally aware of the connections that God is saying, I know what you're doing, or I saw what you did, or I heard what you said, and I'm going to make it clear to you that I'm there and I've got it. I heard that. He does that with Judah. So I want you to have like antenna up to catch those things because it's really, really fascinating. You've done great on the questions. I'm full of questions tonight, but this is just one that lends itself so well. So I hope you don't mind. Question for you, group. What do you think? Because I want to turn to Joseph now, kind of away from the brothers. Let's focus on Joseph. He's in the pit. What are the thoughts? what are the emotions that you imagine Joseph would have right now? And beyond just, I mean, anybody who's thrown in a pit is obviously going to have some feelings about that. As we said, he's probably really bruised up and scratched and bleeding, and who knows what condition he's in. Of course. What I want to know is, how do you think emotionally he's handling this based on the trajectory of what has happened? So, what he was tasked to do, how he got to the place he's at, and then what his own flesh and blood did to him. What are some things that, if you were in that spot, if you were inserted into this story, what are some things that you would be thinking and feeling as you go along? Let me run over to the comments here. Dottie says she thinks sorrow over how he's betrayed by his brothers. I love the word choice that you made with sorrow. Because that's deeper than just feeling bad. That's deeper than sadness. It is, sorrow is in the heart, like you feel it in your soul. And I know you're right. He had to. These were his own flesh and blood. It is, as I said before, it's never fun when you have altercations with close family members, especially when you know you didn't do anything wrong, or at least you think you didn't do anything wrong. Of course, you never meet the person who did something wrong, right? Everybody's innocent, but it's just no fun. And so I think, yeah, that sorrow is really, really deep. Very good. Roberta said, asking God, what are you doing to me? Am I going to die? I cannot believe my brothers are doing this to me. Great work, Roberta. I'm sure he was praying, and he had to, right? He had to be saying, God, what are you doing? Why are you allowing this? I've had these dreams I know are from you, and now I'm in this pit, and they're going to kill me, or they're going to leave me to die. God, why? Why is this happening? Love it. Emily says he may be focusing on the dreams. There we are. That they will all bow to him. Maybe he doesn't know how it's going to turn from this lowest of low. Exactly. I'm sure it all came crashing down on him. Just so many thoughts and feelings, including that. As we just said, God, you gave me these dreams. I know what they mean, but it doesn't look like it's ever going to happen. So what are you doing? Carolyn says he may be thinking, where are you, God? These are good. These are good. Of course, we're not told. We don't know what he was thinking because the Bible doesn't fill us in on what was going on in his mind. We know he was a righteous man. We know he was a man of integrity. We know he had gotten to this point. This is important, through being righteous and acting in integrity. He did everything he was supposed to do. If his father asked him to do it, he did it, even if it was going to cost him. And now, because he did the right thing, he's in a pit. He thinks he's going to die. And now suddenly he's being ripped out of the pit by strangers whose language he likely has never learned and does not even know how to communicate with. And he's sold for a pittance of 20 shekels of silver, the price of just a common slave. He is stripped of his robe. Wow. I mean, this is like about as low as you can go. So terrible betrayal. Just betrayal is one of, I think, the worst things that we go through in this life, isn't it? Especially when it's somebody that you're really close to, or a close family member. Super, super hard. Maybe he was regretful that he'd shared the dreams. Maybe he's down there going, why did I tell them that? I could have kept it to myself and I just had to share it. I don't know. He probably figured he'd never see his dad again. I mean, this is a time where we don't have social media. We don't have cell phones. There's no way to contact if you're not in person, really. And he gets hauled off. He probably thinks, that's it. I'll never see them again. I'll never see my dad. I'll never see my baby brother again. Wow. That's pretty daunting, isn't it? Well, let's go on to verses 29 to 30. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, the boy is gone. And where shall I go? By the way, that where shall I go? That's just an idiom. Like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's an expression, like we might say, what am I supposed to do now? It's probably about how that goes. So we're not told where Reuben went, when he went, or what he was doing, but I think we can kind of piece together He needed to be away from the boys so that they would move on without him. So he went somewhere. Did he take some of the flock? Did he go looking for some goat that was missing? Did he just sort of wander off? I'm going to go for a walk. I'll see you guys later. We don't know, but he took off in order to let them leave. And then his goal was, I will come back. They won't be here. I'll pull him out and then I'll figure out what to do about the situation. So he comes back. Imagine the picture. He runs to the big deep cistern and Joseph's not in it. And he knows Joseph could never climb out of that on his own, especially after they tossed him in. He's probably pretty hurt. And so he goes to his brothers and he says, what have you done? What have you done to them? Well, let me drop down here. Oh, I have so many questions for you tonight. I just realized I have another. Okay. Here. Okay. I'm just going to ask it. I hope you don't mind. You're just doing so good. And I have so many questions for you. Why do you think the brothers didn't just tell their dad that, Joseph never showed up and they just didn't know where he went? Why did they? I feel like I skipped a portion of it. Did I skip a verse in here somewhere? Okay. Maybe I put this in the wrong spot. Yeah, I did. I apologize. 1 second. Go ahead and comment if you already did that, but let me go here. Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, this we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not. If you underline things in your Bible or highlight them, please highlight the end of verse 32 where it says, please identify whether this is your son's robe or not, because next week, that's going to be extremely important in our story. Moving on to verse 33. And he, Jacob, identified it and said, this is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without a doubt torn to pieces. Okay, now the question that I wanted to ask you. Why didn't they just tell their dad that Joseph just never showed up and they just don't know where he went? They could have done, they have a problem. Go ahead and start commenting. Can't wait to hear your answers again. They have a problem here, and that is that his dad obviously knows that he sent Joseph out, and now they have to account for why he didn't come back. Their solution to this problem is just simply to take the coat that they despise so much, that is the symbol of authority, and to tear it to shreds and to kill a goat and dip the robe in the blood. Jacob's not going to be able to tell if it's human blood or goat blood. There's no way to do that in these days. And then just to present it to him, we found this. Could you please identify this? But why not just go to their father and say, when he asks, like, where's Joseph? And say, I don't know. What did you send him out? Well, we never saw him. Oh my goodness. He never made it to us. We were all the way up in Dothan. We came back. We didn't see him. We don't know where he is. Doesn't that seem like it would have been easier? To me, it just does. Let's go to the comments here. Let's see. Dottie says, because they have his coat. Okay, that is true. But they could have ditched the coat, just not come back with, I don't know. But you make, but they wanted to present that coat, didn't they? Because it was an affront to their father. Oh, you're so smart. Emily says, oh, to get the birthright. See, I did not think of that either. So that if he's gone, then the birthright has to be given to somebody else, correct? Good. Oh, you guys are so smart. Somebody says, because he was obedient and he wouldn't have believed them. Oh, okay. Okay, so what you're saying is that Jacob would have been like, there's no way that Joseph just took off and didn't come home. He would have come home. Excellent. Alan says, to make it clear that Joseph is not coming back, and also in a sense to get back at their father for his favoritism toward Joseph. That was the answer that I was kind of thinking myself, although I've loved everything that you guys have said. But in my mind, I was thinking, if he just doesn't come back, then there's no hard stop there, right? In fact, probably what they figured is he will say, you get back out there and do not come home until you have your brother. and now they're in big trouble because they can't produce the brother, and this just goes on and on and on. So this kind of puts a period at the end of that sentence, and I agree. I think they were really vindictive towards their dad. I mean, it's just evil. Carolyn says, if Jacob thought he was dead, the birthright would have to go to another son. Okay, so you as well thought of that, something I had not thought of. That was great. Roberta said their dad would wonder where they found the coat. Okay, so yeah, if they brought the coat back, they definitely had to make an explanation for that. Lori says, didn't want to give Jacob hope for the future. Totally agree. Jan says it would show that he died and the birthright could be passed to another son. There you go. You guys, you're so smart. Somebody said, like Facebook user says, Jacob would not accept that. Okay, so love it. You guys are all tracking with each other. Shirley says Jacob would have gone on looking for him otherwise. Most brilliant, probably discussion we've ever had in Bible Study Hub. I'm in awe. Excellent, excellent points. Love everything you said. Let's see. Let's go on. I've got to get to my next folder of notes here. I got so many. I can put like 50 notes in a folder. I'm already on like 3 or 4 here. So many notes. All right. Now, before we go to the next few verses, so just again, cultural understanding, let's put ourselves into this culture. There was a prescribed amount of time for people to mourn when somebody that they love passed away. We don't really have that today. In fact, what we like to say, and it's probably a good thing, honestly, is there's no timeline for grief, right? In our culture, we say if it takes you a year, if it takes you 5 years, if it takes you 10 years, if it's never, you just need to walk that path at the pace and in the direction that works for you, because everybody grieves a little differently. It's a very Western way of thinking about it. Not bad, not wrong, but it's very Western. In this Eastern culture, that was not how they thought. There was a prescribed amount of time, and I'm not sure what that was, if it was maybe 30 days, 40 days, I'm not sure, that they would be expected to mourn. Like you better be sad, actually. If you're not that sad, you better fake it real good, because you have this prescribed amount of time where you will wear sackcloth. There will be ashes involved. You will look gaunt. You will not work. You will sit on the ground and you will weep. By the New Testament, they will actually hire professional mourners. Do you remember this from the book of Luke? Women who just screech and scream and wail and cry at funerals, because the louder it was, the more honoring it was to the person who had died. We're not quite there at this point in time, but the loved one left behind was expected to show a lot of emotion. Again, very different than how we act in our Western culture when we have our funerals and our memorial services and our visitations. Hushed music. There are dabs of the eyes of tears, a lot of hugs, hushed voices. That's just how we do it. Not goods, not bads, just how we do it. That would have been insulting to them. There was supposed to be loud wailing and weeping. And even now, if you go into Middle Eastern countries, there's much more display of emotion, both good and bad emotion, or like happy or sad emotion. Just much more emotional than we are over here. So I just wanted you to know that before we read this next passage, because it will have a lot more significance. Verses 34 to 36. Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins. There you go, the garb of a mourner, and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, did he say, just give me my prescribed amount of time and then I will move on with my life? No, he does not. He says, no, I shall go down to Sheol, the abode of the dead. This is just what they call the grave, basically. I will go down to my grave, to my son, mourning. Thus his father wept for him. What he's saying is, I will never, ever stop grieving for him. I will never stop mourning. There is no prescribed period of time. I will sit here in my sackcloth and my ashes, and I will mourn and I will wail and I will weep for the rest of my life. I don't think the brothers bargained for that response. How awful would that be? And he cannot be comforted. Verse 36. Meanwhile, shifting scenes, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. Major key there. Underline, highlight if you haven't done that already. That verse just gives us a tiny little glimpse into what's coming up. And it is super important. And what we just read is 100% because God worked the pieces together for Joseph to get into Potiphar's household. But if you think it's going to be a cakewalk, you are wrong. It is not. It's going to be treacherous, but a great story. Well, anyway, you kind of get a sense of where we are now with the mourning. Jacob believes he will never see his son again, that he's dead. I don't think the brothers bargained for the reaction that they now have to live with. And things are just sad and dark and miserable and awful. And isn't that where sin leads us? When they were out in the field with their mob mentality with each other, it seemed like such a great idea to just get rid of him. We can just get rid of him, is what they thought. Oh, look, we can get rid of him and come home with some coins in our pockets. Felt great until reality set in of what they had done and the ramifications that they never could have predicted. And there are more ramifications than they could ever imagine. They have no idea where God is going with this whole thing. They play into his hand whether they want to or not. Listen, God will work with and through you or without and despite you. That's it. God's will be accomplished. You can be a part of it because you're in, or he can work around you, despite you, or without you, but he's going to do what he wants to do. This is something I think about a lot. Lord, please don't let me ever be in a spot where you're like, I'm going to have to work despite you, Anne. I'm going to have to work around you, Anne. I'm going to have to get you out of my way, Anne, because I would so much rather have God be like, I'm going to work through you. I'm going to work with you. I want you to, because I'm gracious, to partner with me, not because I need Anne. God doesn't need me. He doesn't need you, but he takes pleasure and joy in working with and through his creation. So why do we make it so hard sometimes? So we're going to see that God will work despite and around those brothers, and he's going to work with and through Joseph. It's about to get exponentially worse. Now, next week, Lord willing at 9 p.m. Eastern time, but I have to say, if it can't happen, I will probably try to move it again, but my work schedule is all over the board. So thank you for your flexibility tonight with the 7:30 p.m. Eastern time change that we made this morning. Anyway, next week, chapter 38. It's one of those chapters in the Bible that people kind of stumble over a little bit. It's kind of uncomfortable. It's hard. It's hard to understand, but it's fabulous. I love that about the Bible. I love the hard passages because it really makes me think hard. So I hope you will join us next week for chapter 38. I can't wait to go through it with you. We'll just say 9 p.m. Eastern time, please, Lord. Here on Bible Study Hub, Facebook, and YouTube, you can always find us. And if you're on YouTube and you want to join us on Facebook, we have the greatest Facebook group in the whole world. We pray for each other and love each other and uplift each other. It's the most positive group in all of Facebook land. Well, I love you all. I pray for you. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I've got to run. So take care. And hey, you have all the whole night ahead of you now. How nice is that? See you next week.